time for our Monday morning edition of the Alaska News and Comment. I am Steve Floyd, the man with the face made for radio, and it is time for us to take a look at some of our top stories from around the state. We begin today with a story out of Anchorage, where we see that a security guard at the Midtown Anchorage Fred Meyer was stabbed in the neck last night while he was confronting a man suspected of stealing merchandise from the store. Other staff members held on to the man while police were called, and that happened around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The employee wasn't named by police, but was taken to a local hospital and was conscious and breathing. We'll probably hear more on that story later on in the week. Meanwhile, in Fairbanks, the actions of a Good Samaritan saved a Gulfstream woman's life early Thursday morning. An accident left her pinned under her truck. Martha Starich was driving up Murphy Dome Road on her way home from a friend's house at about 1 a.m. when her pickup truck spun out on the ice and rolled. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and she was thrown from the truck, ended up with her legs pinned under it. She lay there screaming, her phone dead, no way of contacting anyone. A man just happened to be driving home, again, at an odd time for him, and he only happened to hear her because the latch on his door wasn't working, and he had the window rolled down so he could reach the outside of the door. So he responded, and they managed to get her out after calling for help. The Obama administration has canceled proposed plans to market Arctic offshore oil leases through the year 2022, and what that has done is set up an early conflict for President-elect Donald Trump. He has said that he wants to increase U.S. oil production. The U.S. Interior Department on Friday released its final 5-year plan for offshore oil drilling leases, including 10 sales in the Gulf of Mexico. They eliminated 2 other options, though, for the Arctic. Oil experts say the Trump administration could end up restoring these sales off Alaska's Arctic coast, but most likely take a couple of years to reverse course. The reaction, typically negative from the Alaska delegation, as Senator Murkowski said that she was infuriated that Obama has, quote, once again ignored the voices of Alaskans who support offshore drilling. Also, Senator Sullivan making a typical anti-Obama comment, and Representative Don Young criticizing the decision as well to cancel the Arctic leases as, quote, politically driven and meant to appease the nation's most extreme environmental groups. Governor Walker said he was disappointed with the decision and argued that the state was willing and able to support subsistence concerns and economic development. Pro-drilling advocates widely accused Obama of putting his own legacy first. Meanwhile, environmentalist groups, who some of which actually got advance notice of the dropped Arctic leases, indeed cheered the announcement. There's a different story on Governor Walker's reaction. His quote, I am very disappointed with the U.S. Department of the Interior's announcement. Alaska supports a plan that balances subsistence concerns with our need for economic development. There is enough opportunity and protection in the plan that it should have been an easy decision to move forward for our proposal. He went on to say that his administration will reconvene with the whaling communities and industry to determine next steps. In light of this closure, as soon as it became clear that Republicans would once again get control of both houses of Congress and the White House, some Alaskans started talking about opening the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to drilling. Others wondered if the president would try to do anything to stop it. In reality, there are a few options open to Obama, and his main route of declaring the land a national monument by executive order isn't as clear-cut for ANWR because of a provision in another piece of public lands legislation. Most likely the question of closing up ANWR for good will be left to the next Congress. So long, sunshine, well, at least for now. At 1:31 on Friday afternoon, the sun set on Barrow for the very last time. Literally. When the sun comes back up again in late January, the city will have a new name, Utqiagvik. That name change will take effect on December 1st. Back in October, residents of Barrow voted narrowly in favor of changing the name. Utqiagvik is an Upyak word that means a place for gathering wild roots. It's actually long been used to describe the greater Barrow community. Donald Trump's many promises on his way to the White House included a tweeted vow to change the new name of North America's tallest mountain back to Mount McKinley. Last year, the Obama administration renamed the Alaska peak Denali in a symbolic gesture to Alaska natives ahead of his visit to the state. Alaskans long have informally called the mountain Denali, the Great One in Athabascan, but the federal government recognized the name, invoking the 25th President William McKinley, who was born in Ohio and assassinated early in his second term. In his tweet, Trump had called the name Twitch a, quote, great insult to Ohio. It's unclear at this early stage if Trump will take any action. The federal board that oversees place names says changing the name would require a presidential executive order or an act of Congress. Meanwhile, to Ammonic, where the damaged sewer system, which left hundreds without service this week, has been jump-started. On Thursday night, a team from the Yukon-Kuskokwim Health Corporation and the state of Alaska's remote maintenance worker program managed to begin restoring the utility service. The Director of Environmental Health and Engineering for YKHC directed the effort, and he said that the remote maintenance worker program saved the day. They got that system running again Thursday night after patching it together with help from local workers in Ammonic. The proposed timber sales on Deer Mountain down in Ketchikan and Petersburg are on hold as officials consider public comments against the issue. The Alaska Mental Health Trust Board will take up the topic in January. Every comment on the plan was negative as of Wednesday. Officials say the delay will give the trust time to consider the public's input. The board decided in August to move forward with the sales if a federal land exchange bill failed in Congress by January 15th. Officials with the trust have said that they prefer an exchange with the Forest Service to get more than 20,000 acres of rural timberland. Residents, meanwhile, have expressed support for the change. Hundreds volunteered on Saturday to help look for a 16-year-old teenager who's been missing for over a week. Hundreds of volunteers gathered in Palmer to search for 16-year-old David Grunwald, who was last heard from last Sunday night when he told his mother he'd be late after dropping off his girlfriend. His Bronco was found burned up a day later. Guardian Search organized volunteers to go comb through the woods. Also had air searches in local businesses going and trying to find any trace of Grunwald. An estimated 300 people gathered to look for the boy. Still no sign of him. The North Pole City Council will meet today for the second reading of Mayor Bryce Ward's proposed 2017 budget. That budget cuts property owners' mill rates to the lowest in city history. It cleared its first reading on November 7th. To offset the drop in the mill rate, Mayor Ward is proposing a 1% hike in the city's sales tax. The council will also be considering a pair of resolutions establishing legislative and capital priorities with the Alaska legislature ahead of the coming session. Meanwhile, in Fairbanks, city officials met with Jake Metcalf, the executive director of the Public Safety Employees Association, on Thursday last week in Anchorage to discuss the contract dispute between the city and the police department. During the meeting, Mayor Jan Matherly, who was accompanied by Chief Financial Officer Carmen Randall, proposed a 5% pay raise for police department employees, plus a $2,000 Christmas bonus for each employee. Matherly and Randall disagreed with Metcalf about the city's ability to pay out the contract in question, and a debate ensued when the two parties did not come to an agreement. According to Metcalf, Matherly made it clear that he was not making an offer because he lacks the authority to do so. The Alaska Labor Relations Agency ruled that Fairbanks committed a labor relations violation when the City Council approved a collective bargaining agreement with the PSEA in August of 2014. Then Councilman Matherly motioned to reconsider the contract because he had concerns about the cost, which included a 36-hour work week, with anything over 36 hours going to overtime. During a meeting in November of 2014, the council voted 6-0 to reject the agreement. The city appealed the agency's ruling to the Superior Court, denying any wrongdoing, and in September, a Superior Court judge ruled the City Council was not a public employer, so the disputed contract was never ratified. On the other hand, according to the ruling, the City Council acted in bad faith by taking a couple of months to reject the contract. Meanwhile, the meeting at City Hall tonight will be the third consecutive meeting in which the City Council is slated to vote on whether to appeal the Superior Court judge ruling on that labor dispute. Part of the issue for Council member Jerry Cleworth is the cost. Some of the other package increase that have already been approved, a 2.5% package increase for International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, a 1.5% increase for American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations employees, a 15.64% package increase for Step 1 police officers, and a 20.25% increase for Step 7 police officers. The state troopers contacted a 36-year-old Fairbanks resident on Thursday morning in reference to outstanding warrants, and he was taken into custody on charges of first and second-degree sexual assault. The man is being held without bail at Fairbanks Correctional Center. Alaska's unemployment rate stood at 6.8% for the third month in a row in October. That follows an adjustment from the rate of September. The Labor Department says the rate for September, which preliminary had been reported at 6.9%, had been revised down to 6.8%. And the adjusted rate for October compares to 6.6% in October of 2015. And according to the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, unemployment remained at 6.6% from October of 2015 through the first 4 months of this year, and slowly inched up since. Nationally, the unemployment rate last month was at 4.9%. In Anchorage, incumbent Anchorage Republican Representative Cherise Millette appeared to seal her re-election bid on Friday after another round of vote counting, increasing her lead over Democratic challenger Pat Higgins now to 76 votes, 23 more than previously. The Alaska LNG project handoff to state leadership is progressing, albeit slower than expected. Alaska Gasline Development Corporation President Keith Meyer told the AGDC Board of Directors on November 10th that negotiations are continuing. He did not meet the intended target of October for a signed agreement, as they had talked about a number of months ago. They also noted that they wanted to have a deal signed with the producers to give the state control of the project by October 31st, which also did not happen. Despite missing the first self-imposed deadline, a December 31st target for state control is still in sight, according to those with the project. Well, it's been 3 months since a former employee of the Blood Bank of Alaska filed a complaint against the nonprofit with the Food and Drug Administration. The former development director at the Blood Bank filed the complaint at the end of August. On Friday, the Blood Bank and its board of directors issued a reply. The complaint alleges that the Blood Bank fell into financial trouble after it took out an unanticipated loan to finish a $45 million new building. The complaint accuses the Blood Bank of trying to raise money to repay the loan by selling Alaskans' blood to a blood bank in California and then leaving the state with a shortage. After the complaint was filed, the Blood Bank launched an internal investigation led by 3 of its board members. And the CEO said that the investigation concluded that all of the allegations in the complaint were unfounded. Now, they do actually provide a California blood bank with blood that's close to its expiration date and money that is used to help collect and process more blood in Alaska. He said there's never been a shortage. He did put out a number of alerts over the summer that blood supplies were critically low. But they said they did that as a precaution after an anticipated blood shortage in the lower 48, and the assumption that Alaska would have a difficult time in getting blood from outside in the event of an emergency. The blood bank has also passed 2 recent audits, and at this point, since the Food and Drug Administration has not presented a request for inspection, they believe the accusations are meritless. The CEO said that he does not believe the FDA was investigating the blood bank, and attempts to reach the FDA on Friday were unsuccessful. Alaska composer Emerson Eads has written The Mass for the Oppressed. It was presented at Holy Cross College in Notre Dame, Indiana on November 13th. The work, which premiered over the summer in Fairbanks, was composed in response to the release of George Freese, Eugene Vent, Marvin Roberts, and Kevin Pease, also known as the Fairbanks Four. The men were tried for a murder that took place in 1997 and were only recently let out of prison after an investigation by the Alaska Innocence Project cast doubt on the legality of their convictions. Now, Eads has been recording the work in the South Bend area with local choristers and orchestra musicians, and one of the soloists is bel canto tenor Barry Banks of the Metropolitan Opera. Another one is Janelle Collier of Fairbanks. A crowdsourced funding campaign is underway through December 2nd at gogetfunding.com, and the recording is expected to be released in March. Local resident Frank Barati is going to be getting back the marijuana that was confiscated from him by the Fairbanks International Airport Police in August of this year. Barati filed a civil suit against the state for the seizure, and last week, Judge Matthew Christian ordered the 8 grams of marijuana be returned to Barati. Barati was traveling to Anchorage from Fairbanks when TSA officials found the marijuana, and of course, per TSA policy, local law enforcement was called. Despite his disagreement, Barati said airport police confiscated the pot. Through a local attorney, Barati contacted the police chief of the FAI and asked that the marijuana be returned. That request was denied, and so therefore Barati took civil action. He happened to be one who advocated for the passage of Ballot Measure 2, which legalized the recreational use and possession of marijuana in Alaska. And he says local and state law enforcement have no right to seize legal amounts of marijuana. He said, quote, "It's contrary to what the voters wanted. When you legalize something and restrict anyone's movement with it or restrict anything having to do with marijuana, you can still, in effect, make it illegal. It's a prohibitionist tactic," unquote. A deadly collision claimed the life of a 73-year-old man in Palmer last week. The head-on collision happened at mile 37.5 of the Glen Highway shortly before 2:30 in the morning. Rufiella Blackmer of Wasilla was driving southbound in a Volvo, and Gary Soloka was traveling northbound in a Sierra when Blackmer's Volvo crossed the center line and collided into Soloka's Sierra in the northbound lane. Soloka was pronounced dead at the scene. A passenger in the vehicle with him was flown by lifeboat to a local hospital with serious injury. Troopers now say that alcohol is believed to be a factor in the collision. A Wasilla man who kidnapped two North Pole girls last year was sentenced on Friday to serve more than 13 years in prison after a federal judge rejected the terms of a plea deal as too lenient. Michael D. Bowen Jr. admitted to kidnapping the girls back on August 1st of 2015 as the girls were riding their bicycles home from a store in North Pole on a rainy day. Bowen drove the girls, who were 9 and 6 at the time, south on the Richardson Highway and then turned around after 2 hours when the 9-year-old told him that their father worked with the police. Bowen dropped the girls off near their home, and they told North Pole police what happened, but the investigation was delayed as police tried to determine whether they were telling the truth. The girls were interviewed by an FBI agent trained in interviewing children and was able to get a detailed description of Bowen and his truck. Security camera footage from a local business provided more details, and Bowen's truck was spotted at a Van Horn Road business on August 7th of 2015. He was brought in for questioning and was later arrested. Bowen was charged with 2 counts of kidnapping but pleaded guilty to a reduced count of coercion and enticement of a minor and got an agreed-upon sentence of 10 years. But at Friday's sentencing hearing, U.S. District Judge Ralph Weislein balked at being asked to accept a lesser charge. He said he didn't think Bowen was an evil man, but he didn't want the message going out that the minimum sentence was acceptable. And so he tacked on an extra 3 years. ConocoPhillips said Thursday that it's in the initial stages of trying to sell its plant on the Kenai Peninsula that has, for nearly 50 years, liquefied the natural gas from Quick Inlet for export to overseas markets. Adjusting to low oil and LNG prices that have battered the industry, the company cited market conditions in that statement issued on Thursday. It also said it's focused on its North Slope operations, where it has broken new ground on the western edge of the state's North Slope oil fields, pushing into federal territory in the National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska. A Coast Guard helicopter crew rescued 4 people stranded on an Alaska island after their boat capsized. No one was injured in the Friday morning capsizing in Marcia Bay near Knight Island in Prince William Sound. Coast Guard was notified by a Good Samaritan who heard a distress call stating that the 28-foot boat was taking on water. Troopers received the emergency beacon alert later. The Coast Guard launched a helicopter, an HC-130 Hercules, and boat crews to the site. And while the Coast Guard could see the boaters, the water was too shallow and the area too rocky for the crew to reach them. The helicopter crew then hoisted the stranded people and transported them to Cordova. A man from Calgary, Canada, has been banned from hunting anywhere in the world for a year. He was also fined thousands of dollars for illegally importing the carcass of an Alaskan brown bear. Environment Canada says Jason John Clement was found guilty in June and was ordered to pay $13,500 for violating the Wild Animal and Plant Protection and Regulation of International and Interprovincial Trade Act. Most of the penalty will go to the Environmental Damages Fund, while $1,350 will go to the federal government. An additional $1,300 fine will be paid to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. As well, Clement is prohibited for 2 years from importing and exporting wildlife to and from Canada. The court also banned him from hunting in or outside Canada for 1 year and required him to forfeit the bear's hide and skull. A Fairbanks Correctional Center inmate is going to be spending 70 months in jail for a tax fraud scheme that he committed while incarcerated. A federal judge sentenced 41-year-old Fairbanks inmate Earl Worthy on Friday to the maximum sentence permitted under the terms of a plea agreement. Worthy and his co-defendant, Tammy Jean Jackson used names and Social Security numbers of 55 people to file 95 false tax returns between the years 2009 and 2012. Most of the people were inmates at jails in Fairbanks, Anchorage, and Tucson, Arizona. Some of them knowingly participated in the scheme, and others were unaware that their identities were being used for tax refunds. Worthy pleaded guilty to 3 counts: the conspiracy to defraud the government, mail fraud, and aggravated identity theft. Jackson previously was sentenced to 5 years probation. Her sentence was much lighter because she played a smaller role in the conspiracy. She also had a shorter criminal record and did not plead guilty to an identity theft charge. At Friday's hearing, Worthy's attorney asked for a lesser sentence of 3.5 years. Worthy told the court that he wanted the opportunity to work and earn an honest paycheck. He said he was in a dark place, had been using cocaine and heroin in jail at the time that he committed the fraud. Worthy was serving time for a probation violation when he was indicted on the charges related to the tax returns. Multiple shots were fired at a downtown party in Anchorage just before 4 a.m. on Saturday morning. An Anchorage police sergeant patrolling downtown heard multiple shots, and at the same time a number of 911 calls reported hearing the same thing, one call in particular claiming the shots had been fired at an after-party on East Ship Creek Avenue. When officers arrived at the scene, they found more than 20 shell casings outside, but no one reported any injuries, although multiple vehicles were hit by bullets. Police investigated and did not find anyone that had been hurt. It had been reported that dozens of people were at the building for an after-party following a DJ's performance at a downtown nightclub. Apparently the building had been rented out, and during the after-party there was some kind of altercation between multiple men that resulted in a shooting outside. At some point, an officer spotted a man with a gun running from the scene. The man dropped the gun on First Avenue and was arrested. Police recovered the gun. They found out it had been reported as stolen from Mountain View Sports. Actually, Mountain View Sports reported having multiple guns stolen back in July. The suspect who had the gun was identified as 23-year-old Dashawn Anthony Street, and he's been charged with second-degree theft, resisting or interfering with arrest, and third-degree misconduct involving a weapon. Street's bail was set at $4,000 plus a third-party custodian. He was also charged with being a felon in possession of a stolen firearm. He was not actually charged with the shooting itself. A live-in caregiver was arrested for allegedly assaulting the paraplegic client. That happened on Saturday around 7:30 in the evening when a VPSO and a Prince of Wales trooper received a report of the assault in the southeast community of Thorn Bay. The victim is paraplegic and confined to bed. He reported he had been assaulted by his live-in caregiver. Investigation led to the arrest of 61-year-old Dawn Carmona of Thorn Bay. She's been convicted on 3 separate occasions for assault over the preceding 10 years. Carmona was taken to the Craig jail and is awaiting arraignment. It was last Friday, just a few raw days after the presidential election, when Adam Lee Jacobson was driving through Anchorage's University Medical District, and he passed a man holding a cardboard sign that shocked him. In bold letters, the sign read, "Deport all Mexicans. Do what Donald Trump wants. Mexicans take our jobs." Jacobson, who's a 34-year-old who works at 2 restaurants while studying business management at University of Alaska Anchorage, made a split-second decision to pull over and talk to the stranger. He didn't realize that what would happen next would be seen by millions of people around the world. He also didn't know the whole story. The man had a backstory that few people knew about. Jacobson said he wanted to stand up to what he saw as prejudice in plain sight, so he parked the car and approached the man, pulled out his phone and started recording the conversation in case things went sideways. The man holding the sign said he believed he had been fired from Dairy Queen and replaced by people from Mexico who were being paid less than minimum wage. Jacobson argued with him, and the conversation itself lasted about 2 minutes. When it was posted on Facebook, he was thinking his 600 or so friends and followers would see it. But then, on Saturday, he noticed the video had already been viewed 4,000 times, and over the weekend, it was shared more than 25,000 times. By Monday of last week, 2.5 million views. The scene joined a growing number of racially and ethnically charged incidents captured on phones and circulated on social media, and of course it struck a nerve. However, the backstory of the man, the person who was holding the sign, is that he has mental illness. He's had a number of disabilities and has not been able to hold a job. His mother said that she's been trying to get him into assisted living, but he just leaves. And the man himself last name of Brown, Matthew Brown, 22 years old, unemployed, diagnosed with, quote, mild mental retardation. He says that he just wants people to like him. He doesn't want them to hate him. And he has been hit with a number of frightening messages online. Of course, people on the internet didn't know the backstory, the mental illness and whatnot. Jacobs didn't know either until he found out that the video was heading toward 2.5 million views, and a reporter called him. So he began to reflect on how quickly an act that was meant to stand up to bigotry led to threats of violence by a faceless online mob. And Jacobson went back to Facebook and wrote a new post. Threatening people with violence is never okay, he said. He has every right to be dead wrong in his beliefs, to broadcast those beliefs publicly, and do so without fear for his safety. Jacobson then, of course, decided to take the video down. This last week, Brown himself could be found on the corner of Northern Lights Boulevard and A Street holding another cardboard sign. The only way he said he could make the problem go away was to apologize. And his sign read, "Open border. Welcome Mexicans. I am sorry, Mexicans. God bless you." Court documents say that a man who stars in the hit reality TV series Deadliest Catch was strangled and suffered a skull fracture during the robbery. 33-year-old Jake Harris also had brain swelling, broken blood vessels in his eyes, and bruising from something his assailant apparently wrapped around his throat. Harris told police that he and others were in a car coming back from a casino last Saturday when a man sitting behind him began to choke and beat him. He had met the woman and man while gambling the day before. Harris was found later alongside an Everett road. And police in Everett, Washington told Harris that they could not find his wallet or the $2,400 that was apparently in it. Amanda Ritter and Jorel Fultz were arrested in Spokane on Tuesday on suspicion of robbing him. Back in August, a lightning blast claimed the lives of more than 300 reindeer in Norway. The month before, an anthrax epidemic, which Russian officials blamed on microbes that thawed after spending decades frozen inside a reindeer corpse, sickened several indigenous people in Siberia. Anthrax killed a 12-year-old boy, and reindeer died by the hundreds. In the disease's aftermath, the regional government proposed to terminate 250,000 reindeer by Christmas of last year. And now, even more bad news. With rain in the area, Siberian reindeer have not been able to eat what they normally do, and it looks like they've been hit with starvation to the tune of tens of thousands. Apparently, Rudolph just can't catch a break. Well, if you live in a neighborhood that's frequented by bears, if you could get your hands on a bear-resistant trash container at no extra cost, would you take one? Anchorage residents have demonstrated time and again that the answer may be no. The latest example comes from the Government Hill neighborhood of Anchorage. This spring, Solid Waste Services ordered 100 bear-resistant roll carts and sent notices to Government Hill residents offering a free upgrade for this year. By the end of summer, only 10% of about 374 eligible homeowners had actually opted to participate in that pilot program. Most of the bear carts sat in the warehouse all summer. Government Hill is the neighborhood where garbage attracted a black bear sow with 4 cubs during the summers of 2014 and again 2015. And although some residents took precautions, most acted as if having 5 bears in the neighborhood isn't worth doing anything about, except perhaps to complain. When the cubs were half grown and they had learned to associate humans with garbage, the state stepped in last summer and moved the entire family at a cost of about $10,000 to the Kenai Peninsula to protect Government Hill residents from their collective civic ennui. About the times where the bears were relocated, SWS took that unusual step of providing a community dumpster for Government Hill homeowners. Appreciated by many, the free dumpster was a temporary solution meant to be replaced by the bear cans. After about 2 months after their relocation, that sow and 3 cubs that had been relocated, well, they got shot in Hope after they had a string of raids on garbage, chickens, and campgrounds. A hunter shot the last of the cub in September. From the bear's perspective, relocation was a failure. It also didn't solve the human garbage problem. While the governor ordered Fish and Game biologists to relocate the bears, the agency reminded residents that the trash problems left unresolved will continue to draw bears to the area. And if you're interested in the weather today, we are generally going to be seeing some pretty chilly temperatures. A high around 1 above. Tonight, a low between -8 and -18. And it's going to be mostly clear over the next couple of days. And that is our latest news for this Monday morning. It is November 21st, 2016. Hope you enjoyed today's broadcast from myself, the man with the face made for radio. All the links for the news stories that I brought you are included on my website, radiofreespeech.com. And if you like what I'm doing, please consider becoming a subscriber. There is a PayPal link, once again, at radiofreespeech.com. That's radiofreespeech.com. Coming soon, an interactive discussion via chat. And as soon as I can get the phone lines in with your voice as well, radiofreespeech.com. That's radiofreespeech.com. Please tell your friends, and we'll see you again next time.